Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. After all that unfolded in 2020, who could have imagined the first full week of 2021 could deliver its own landslide of unbelievable headlines? The sanctity of the U.S. Capitol, the seat of American democracy, was breached on January 6th as rioters ransacked the halls of Congress. The chaos and violence resulted in not just destruction, but death, including the loss of a Capitol police officer. Here this morning to discuss, Congresswoman Annie Kuster. And Congresswoman, we are so glad you're safe. We want to cut right to the chase. You and many others believe President Donald Trump incited this mob and should be removed from office. And there are now reports, as we tape here on Friday morning, that the House will be voting on articles of impeachment potentially in the middle of next week. How will you be voting?
Well, I think the country would be much safer to have Vice President Pence take the helm for the next 2 weeks until the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I think the president demonstrated both by inciting the violence and the, honestly, domestic terrorism in the United States Capitol, the very seat of our democracy, the very symbol that has held fast for over 200 years, but also that he denied the National Guard to come in and clear the Capitol, even while I was in a secure location, having been evacuated from the balcony of the House of Representatives. We were there, hundreds of members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats, I might add, together, and we were there for 6 hours. And during that time, part of the lengthy delay, I now understand, was because the President of the United States would not authorize the National Guard, and Vice President Pence had to take steps to clear the Capitol and make it safe for our democracy to continue. I'm so proud of my colleagues when we went back to the floor at 9 p.m. on Wednesday night, and we continued our constitutional duty to reaffirm the election of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And that's what's important, Adam. Democracy prevailed.
Impeachment is a solemn and deliberative process. Certainly, if this moves forward, it would be no less solemn, but it would be very fast. Can it be done this quickly?
I believe it can, and we'll learn more. We're taping Friday morning, so I don't have all the details. I'll be on a caucus call in just a few hours, and we have a plan, and we'll do what we can. I took an oath to defend the Constitution and to protect the American people, and that's what I intend to do. I'm going to protect my constituents. It was not safe when we were in the Capitol on Wednesday. We had a solemn duty to fulfill our constitutional obligation to reaffirm the election. But when these rioters stormed both the Senate floor and the House floor, we had to immediately evacuate. I think you've seen the photo of me with the gas mask. We had to duck down and take cover. We've now learned that the rioters did have semi-automatic weapons, and one man was found with 11 Molotov cocktails. So the president has incited this violence. The country is not safe. We would have been at risk of an outside attack at the time of the distraction, and our allies around the world are calling out for stability and civility and a return to the integrity of our democracy, as well as the American people. I'm hearing from thousands of constituents, Adam, who are concerned about our safety in the next 2 weeks until Mr. Biden is inaugurated.
And certainly the mere action, taking this action against President Trump could incite yet again, even though it is a constitutional process. Are you worried that your safety might be in danger again if you take this step and the president reacts strongly?
Well, my proposed solution and what I've called for is the 25th Amendment. I've called on the Vice President Pence and the cabinet, and I understand that those discussions are ongoing. I implore my Republican colleagues to convince Mr. Trump to step down. He can resign. So it would be only as a last resort if these steps are not taken in the next several days.
You mentioned the difficulty in obtaining forces to come and back up the Capitol Police in terms of the National Guard from Virginia and Maryland, the delays there on the federal side. This is a parallel issue here, but do you think this strengthens the cause for D.C. statehood, the fact that it was powerless essentially to act in this situation?
Well, I think there will be a thorough investigation. I've been reading up on what's known already this morning. There are overlapping jurisdictions that delayed the decision making, but ultimately there were decisions that were made early in this process that failed to support the Capitol Hill Police. I want to make a point of thanking the Capitol Hill Police. I have such gratitude for these officers who protect us every day in the Capitol, but on Wednesday literally put their lives on the line to get us to safety. And they really prevented extraordinary bloodshed. Adam, I want to explain to you that now that I've pieced together the timeline, it was right after I was able to escape the chamber that the gunshots were fired into the House chamber. And that shortly after that, that the perimeter of the chamber was breached, and the some call them seditionists, but certainly rioters made their way onto the floor of the House. That's only minutes. I mean, 3, 4, 5 minutes after there were hundreds of people on the floor of the House, well over 100 members on the floor. The press was there, the staff was there, and the Capitol Hill Police themselves. So if someone had opened fire with an automatic weapon, we would be talking about a mass casualty event with hundreds of deaths. So I'm so grateful for the frontline officers who did their part. But look, Adam, we know what security looks like on Capitol Hill and in Washington. If you look at the photos, any major demonstration, the photos from the inauguration or from a Black Lives Matter, for example, demonstration, you will see full-blown riot gear. You'll see paramilitary, military, Department of Defense, National Guard coming to protect these iconic institutions of our democracy. That decision-making failed, and I want to make sure that that was not a political decision with anyone at the White House protecting these rioters.
There were Granite Staters in that crowd, and we've learned that a police chief from within your district was there, the police chief of Troy, New Hampshire. What do you think about that?
Well, I would love to talk to him, and I will reach out to him so that I understand what his motivations were. I think he is a very good example of distinguishing between the right to free speech and the right of your First Amendment right. I've said this repeatedly. I was disappointed by the results of the election in 2016 when Donald Trump was elected. And it's not unusual for people to bring their thoughts and ideas and solutions and grievances to Washington and to Capitol Hill. So from what I've read, I understand the police chief is an ardent Trump supporter. And there were many, I call them tourists, political tourists. I saw them on the streets for days before the rally who came. But this is to distinguish the inciting of violence. And I think this police chief has spoken out about the anarchy, that he is opposed to the people who breached the Capitol, broke windows, destructed property, and put everyone at risk. I had two friends, Adam, my closest friends, were hiding, barricaded in a room. It's the door that you can see from those photos of the rioters streaming through the rotunda. And they were barricaded in there for 5 hours, fearing for their life. I feared for my life. And I protected my colleagues, and we got to safety with the assistance of the Capitol Hill Police. But I think everyone needs to understand, and frankly, my Republican colleagues and every Republican needs to make a decision in these next 2 weeks. Who do you stand with? Do you stand with our democracy or with anarchy? And that's a very serious decision. I'm so pleased to see my Republican colleagues, both in the House and the Senate, calling for the resignation of Mr. Trump and calling for Vice President Pence to step up and resume order, decency, and the integrity of our democracy.
We have multiple crises, of course, unfolding at once here. The COVID-19 pandemic is still ongoing. I want to ask you a little bit about the vaccine. Governor Sununu has said that he doesn't think that the federal side could speed things up at all in terms of administering and delivering this vaccine. We know that President-elect Biden does want to try and do that. Where do you stand on this? Do you think this could be moving faster right now?
Absolutely. I think the failure of, again, the Trump administration to protect the American people and to plan to have a federal plan for the administration of the vaccine is unforgivable. My committee has been working on this since last February, and we have repeatedly introduced legislation and had conversations with Dr. Fauci and others that wanted a federal plan. I will continue to bring that legislation forward, and I'm looking forward to the Biden-Harris administration so that we can coordinate. And this, I will have to disagree with the governor, absolutely, to bring in the resources, to have a workforce that is available. At this point, we need to bring in the Defense Production Act for the manufacturing of hundreds of millions of doses. But more importantly, we need to get those doses into the arms of every single American. And so while I want to commend the public health officials here in New Hampshire and the work that they're doing, this should be an absolute #1 priority for our country. Every person should get this vaccination as quickly as possible. We had the highest number of deaths in one single day, 4,000, just within the last couple of days. Here in New Hampshire, a third of the people that have ever been hospitalized for COVID were hospitalized in 1 month, in the month of December. And we have over 300 people in the hospital today. So we absolutely can do better, and we must. And as soon as you're offered the vaccine, please take it. I wanted to set that example to be that it's safe and effective, that you should not be fearful of this. And that's the way we're going to get out of COVID-19 and get our economy booming, get our children back to work, get our lives back. You can get more information by calling 211 or going to nh.gov/COVID-19. I'm so pleased when I meet people. I met a teacher and a physical therapist that had already gotten their vaccine. I want to make sure that everyone in New Hampshire gets the vaccine just as fast as we can.
All right, Congresswoman, so much we could keep discussing, but unfortunately we've hit our time. Thank you again for your time, and again, we're so glad you're safe.
Thank you so much, Adam. Be safe, be well.
You as well.